a town where silver spoke louder than sorrow, they tried to put a price on a mother's soul, until one man stepped forward, not to bargain, but to save. The sun burned down on the dusty town of Deadwood Hollow, casting long, merciless shadows across the cracked wooden boards of the auction platform. A hushed crowd gathered, their silence heavier than any news. And at the center of it all stood her, Clara May Whitlock, barefoot, her hair braided with care she no longer had the energy to feel. Her head bowed low, not from guilt, but from something far crueler, humiliation. Her 3 children clung to her legs, their tiny faces twisted in confusion and fear. The twins, just 2, didn't understand what was happening, but the oldest, little Thomas, knew enough. He kept asking why they were standing there, why everyone was staring. She had no answers. Just 6 weeks earlier, Clara had a husband, a home, and hope. Jedediah Whitlock wasn't a perfect man, but he was honest and kind, and he loved her fiercely. But the West was unforgiving. One moment Jed was riding back from the mines with a pack full of hopes, and the next, he was lying in the back of a wagon, blood drying around a bullet wound meant for someone else. Death came quickly. Debt came quicker. With no man to pay and no kin willing to help, the town council ruled her a liability. In a cruel twist of frontier law, she and her children became wards of the town, and the town wanted its money back. Sheriff Emmett Kane, a man known more for greed than justice, announced the solution. Clara and her children would be adopted by any man who could pay the back taxes and fees, provided he had coin and claimed responsibility for them all. They called it guardianship, but everyone in that crowd knew what it really was, a sale. That morning, Clara had prayed someone would stop it, someone would object. But now, as Sheriff Kane stood grinning beside her, shaking a small wooden box filled with silver coins, the last pieces of her dignity began to shatter. The bidding would begin shortly, and the first offer came from a man she had feared all her life, Harlan Fisk, a pig of a man with yellow teeth and thick fingers. He stepped forward, his smile slick with cruelty. He pulled out a leather pouch and dropped it into Kane's greedy hand. Clara clenched her jaw. Her heart raced. Her arms instinctively reached to cover her children, as if love alone could shield them. Then a voice, calm, deep, steady, cut through the silence. That won't be necessary. The crowd parted slowly, heads turning in surprise. Out of the sun-drenched horizon came a man not many recognized, but those who did stepped back with respect. He wore a dusty leather jacket, boots worn from real work, and eyes the color of steel skies. His name was Elijah Crow, a rancher from the outskirts, quiet, unbothered by town politics. Rumor was he had buried a wife 3 winters ago and had never spoken much since, until now. He stepped onto the platform with quiet confidence. Kane squinted at him. "What business you got here, Crow?" Elijah didn't flinch. The business of stopping a crime dressed up as law. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harlan chuckled. "You going to outbid me, Cowboy? Think you can afford her and her brats?" Elijah turned, looked Clara straight in the eyes for the first time, not like a man eyeing property, but like a man seeing pain, deep, unjust pain, and vowing to carry some of it. Then he opened his own pouch and poured out coins, twice as many as Harlan's. "I ain't buying her," Elijah said, his voice sharp and deliberate. "I'm redeeming her." Kane hesitated. The townsfolk shifted uncomfortably. Harlan spat on the ground and growled, "You just bought yourself a whole heap of trouble, Crow." Elijah turned slowly. Then trouble finally met someone not afraid of it. Sheriff Kane could have pushed back, could have refused the deal. But silver talks, and Elijah's pile shined brighter than Harlan's. The sheriff grunted, stepped back, and nodded reluctantly. "Fine, she's yours." Clara couldn't breathe. Her knees buckled, and she might have fallen had Elijah not caught her. "Why?" she whispered, tears catching in her throat. "Why would you do this?" Elijah looked down at her, voice low. "Because no mother should be priced like cattle, and no child should grow up believing that shame belongs to them." He helped her and the children off the platform. The crowd began to break apart, some ashamed, others just disappointed they didn't get a better show. But a few clapped softly, quietly, like maybe, just maybe, they remembered what decency looked like. Elijah took Clara and her children back to his ranch. It wasn't charity. He asked for nothing, demanded nothing, just offered shelter, food, and space to heal. At first, Clara was wary. After all, she'd just witnessed the darkest side of man. But over weeks, something changed. Her children laughed again. She began to walk with her head a little higher. And Elijah, quiet, respectful, patient, became more than a rescuer. He became hope reborn. Still, the past wasn't done with them. Harlan Fisk wasn't the type to let humiliation go unanswered. One night, he and 2 of his men rode to Elijah's ranch, torches in hand. But Elijah was waiting. What he lacked in numbers, he made up for in conviction. A gunfight broke out, fierce and sudden. Elijah took a bullet in the shoulder, but stood his ground. Harlan fled, bleeding, never to show his face in those parts again. Clara ran to Elijah, blood on her hands as she pressed them to his wound. "You risked your life," she whispered, tears falling again. "For me?" He looked up, smiling despite the pain. "No, for what's right." By the time spring rolled in, Clara had planted flowers outside the ranch house. The children had their own ponies, and one quiet morning, as they stood watching the sun rise over the fields, Clara slipped her hand into Elijah's, not because she owed him, but because she finally believed in love again. Some people believe honor died in the Wild West, but sometimes one man can stand up and remind the world what it means to protect, not possess, and to fight not with greed, but with grace. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Frontier Love Tales, where every story carries the weight of love, sacrifice, and courage on the wild frontier.